Hello and welcome to this press conference. I'm Elizabeth Thompson with CBC News. With us today we have Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, Sean Fraser, the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities, the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, Jenna Sudds, and the Minister of Small Business, Rechie Valdez. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Ms. Freeland?
Okay, good morning. Thank you very much. Bon matin. Je tiens d'abord à faire le point sur notre nouveau compte d'épargne libre d'impôts pour l'achat d'une première propriété. Je vais ensuite céder la parole au Sean, ministre Fraser, qui nous parlera de l'aide que nous offrons aux fournisseurs de coopératives d'habitation pour qu'ils puissent construire plus de logements plus rapidement pour la population canadienne. Par la suite, la ministre Sudds fera le point sur notre système pan-canadien de services d'apprentissage et de garde des jeunes enfants abordables. Et enfin, la ministre Valdez nous parlera des progrès importants que nous faisons pour faire baisser les frais que les petites entreprises paient au Canada. Earlier this year, our government introduced the new tax-free First Home Savings Account. The tax-free First Home Savings Account allows Canadians to contribute up to $40,000 towards the purchase of their first home. Like an RRSP, contributions are tax deductible, and like a TFSA, withdrawals to purchase a first home, including investment income, are non-taxable. It's tax-free in, tax-free out. For Canadians saving for their first home, the tax-free First Home Savings Account can and is making a real difference. That's why today I'm really delighted to announce that more than 300,000 Canadians have opened a tax-free First Home Savings Account. That is 300,000 Canadians who are one step closer to getting those first keys of their own. I know that housing is the priority for millions of Canadians today. And that's why a central focus of our economic plan is housing. Building more homes faster, making it easier for Canadians to buy a home, and supporting Canadians who rent or already own their home. Through our fall economic statement, our government has continued to take real, concrete action to tackle the housing challenge that is top of mind for so many Canadians. That includes through the new Canadian Mortgage Charter. The Canadian Mortgage Charter details the tailored mortgage relief that Canadians can expect from their banks if they are in a challenging financial situation. That's because our goal is to protect Canadians by making sure they have the support they need to afford their mortgages and keep their homes if they're struggling to renew at a time of higher interest rates. Alors qu'il s'agisse d'aider les gens à épargner en vue d'acheter leur premier logement, de protéger celles et ceux qui ont du mal à payer leur hypothèque ou de bâtir plus de logements plus rapidement. Partout au pays, notre gouvernement s'efforcera chaque jour pour obtenir des résultats pour les Canadiennes et les Canadiens et de rendre le logement plus abordable pour le bien de chaque personne d'une nation à l'autre. Merci beaucoup, and I'll pass it over to Sean.
Merci tout le monde. Merci Chrystia pour votre intervention. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I want to talk about cooperative housing this morning. Co-ops are a really important part of the housing ecosystem in Canada, and they currently provide homes to about 250,000 Canadians. What's unique about co-op housing is it creates an opportunity to add homes to the housing supply, but it also keeps rents low in the long term. The way that this works is the people who actually live in cooperative housing developments have a say about how those cooperatives are managed. The way that you get to have a say is by renting a place in a cooperative housing development where you get to vote on how the building's actually going to be managed, how it's going to be maintained, and importantly, what you're going to pay for rent. Because the incentives for the residents of a cooperative housing development are aimed at managing a building appropriately but keeping rents low, we tend to see much lower increases in rent over a long period of time. And we know this works because with 250,000 people living in cooperative housing today, we can demonstrate based on the evidence that the rents paid in cooperative housing are lower than what the market would actually bear because the profit has been removed from the equation, but the costs are going towards properly maintaining a building rather than earning revenue for a private sector actor. One of the things that I'm thrilled to share today is that we're going to be moving forward with a $71 million investment that's going to build or retrofit 1,660 co-op homes across Canada. Of that 1,660, almost 1,200 are going to be new builds, and the balance are going to involve retrofits to existing structures that will protect their ability to continue to provide affordable rent for the long term. What's exciting to me is that although these projects will be spread across Canada, this is the latest investment in cooperative housing across Canada. You will have seen in the recent fall economic statement an additional contribution of $309 million towards more support for co-ops. That's part of a $1.5 billion program that's going to build thousands of new homes in the years ahead. In addition to this direct contribution to building more homes for Canadians, we're also taking the step to scope cooperative housing developments into the GST measures we put in place to incentivize new apartment construction. We want to see more cooperative housing in Canada because we believe this is a unique solution to the housing crisis for many Canadians. I was actually at a co-op development recently, not far from Toronto. It was built about 40 years ago. It's not a coincidence that it was built about 40 years ago. Most cooperative housing in the country is about that old, because that's the last time that the federal government actually invested in cooperative housing of a meaningful scale until the adoption of the National Housing Strategy back in 2017. What we've seen was a lack of investment, not just in cooperative housing, but in affordable housing more broadly. For 30 years, governments, both Liberal and Conservative, by the way, decided not to make investments in affordable housing. What we've seen as a result is a direct and predictable consequence of fewer non-market homes in this country. Canada has less than 4% of its housing stock offered outside of the market to ensure that low-income families have a place to live. For what it's worth, the OECD average is about 8%. As a result of a sustained lack of investment for decades, Canada now is facing a shortage of affordable housing in the ecosystem that manifests itself in a lot of very challenging ways. Now, we can change that, but not without sustained direct investment by the federal government in affordable housing. One of the things as a public office holder that I find extremely frustrating is there are a range of views on the appropriateness in the House of Commons about whether governments should invest in affordable housing. The Conservative Party of Canada, and I should say specifically their leader, Pierre Poilievre, is making comments in public about how the federal government should get out of the housing game. Repeat the mistakes of the past where we have not been making investments for decades and living with the consequences. What's important to me about today's announcement is not just the fact that we're investing to build more than 1,600 homes that will be offered at affordable prices, but that we're going to continue to be making investments in affordable housing across Canada in a sustained way. If we continue to make these investments, we can create an ecosystem that provides for low-income families and make sure that every Canadian has a roof over their head. We cannot afford to make the mistakes of the past and get out of the housing game. And today's announcement demonstrates our continued commitment to building more homes that people can actually afford. Thank you very much. With that, je vais passer la parole à ma collègue, Minister Sudds. Merci tout le monde.
Thank you very much, Sean, and good morning. Thank you, everyone, for being here. In 2021, we set out to transform early learning and childcare here in Canada, to build a Canada-wide system with provinces, territories, and Indigenous partners that was shaped around a shared vision that all families, no matter where they live, have access to high-quality, affordable, and inclusive early learning and childcare. And 2.5 years later, our plan is working. 6 provinces and territories have delivered on licensed childcare at an average of $10 a day or less, and all jurisdictions have reduced fees by at least 50%. Alors que l'année 2023 tire à sa fin, plusieurs parents auront vu les bénéfices depuis un an. Mais qu'est-ce que cela veut dire concrètement pour les familles? For families in Newfoundland who have seen their fees reduced to $10 a day, this means savings of up to $6,300 annually per child. That $6,300 could offset rent and enable a growing family to move from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom apartment. In Ontario, families are saving up to $8,500 every year. And that's hundreds of dollars each month back into the pockets of hardworking families. For Ontario families with 2 children, that's $17,000 a year staying in their bank account. I've heard from parents across the country the transformative impact that these savings have had on their lives. However, this is about more than just reducing fees. One thing that the pandemic has certainly made clear is that without childcare, parents, especially mothers, cannot return to work. If we are to build a more inclusive, resilient economy, we must also build an economy that supports all women and removes barrier to full participation in the workforce. Our government will continue, as we have since 2015, to advance gender equality and inclusion in all of the work that we do. When childcare becomes more affordable and spaces become more accessible, women have more opportunities to pursue their career and to grow and support the economy. For many parts of the country, labor force participation among working-aged mothers with young children has never been this high, nearing 80% over the last 12 months. While there are many contributing factors to that, we know that our investments in childcare are supporting more women entering the workforce. As we build and create more spaces across the country, we provide more women the opportunity to reach their full economic potential. Our goal is to create 250,000 new childcare spaces across the country by 2026. Doing so will ensure maximum social and economic impact of our investments in early learning and childcare. As we near the end of this year of 2023, I am happy to share that we have over 80,000 new spaces that have already been announced. That's over 80,000 children who will have access to high-quality, affordable spaces where they can learn and grow. In Nova Scotia, we're seeing new childcare spaces for infants and toddlers, including places like Pictou and Cumberland County. Au Nouveau-Brunswick, des places de garde francophones supplémentaires seront disponibles dans des communautés comme Dieppe et Dalhousie. And recently I was in London, Ontario, to announce that almost 3,000 additional spaces would be created across the city by 2026. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that it does take more than bricks and mortar to make a space. We need the talented and dedicated educators who are the cornerstone of our childcare system. Early childhood educators are truly the heart of the nationwide system that we are building. C'est pourquoi nous collaborons avec nos partenaires provinciaux et territoriaux afin de mettre en œuvre des mesures pour recruter et maintenir en poste cette main-d'œuvre essentielle. The childcare workforce is critical to Canada's economic success and the success of our Canada-wide system. Not only do they provide essential service to support labor force participation, but they also educate and develop the future leaders of our great country. What we are doing is truly transformative. It's not just good feminist policy, it's also good social policy and smart economic policy. Il s'agit d'un plan visant à stimuler la croissance économique, à permettre aux parents, spécialement aux mères, d'entrer ou de revenir sur le marché du travail, à soutenir les familles et à offrir à chaque enfant du Canada les meilleurs départs possibles dans la vie. I remain committed to working with my colleagues across Canada and those with me here today so that more families have access to affordable, high-quality childcare. Thank you very much, and I will pass it to my colleague, Rechie.
Thank you, Jenna. And I can certainly attest that more women have entered the workforce and have chosen even entrepreneurship and opening their own small business as well. So good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Today is a great day for Canada's small business owners and entrepreneurs. By finalizing commitments from Visa and Mastercard to reduce credit card transaction and interchange fees, we are removing a weight from the shoulders of small businesses, from small business owners from coast to coast to coast. These reductions will collectively put $1 billion back into the pockets of eligible small businesses over 5 years. As a former small business owner myself, I know that it's never been easy to build a business from the ground up. And that's especially true for in these last few years with the rising inflation and interest hikes. Nous savons qu'à cœur de leur communauté, c'est ce progrès qui compte le plus. This is in addition to the supports our government is already delivering for small business owners, from cutting costs and taxes for growing small businesses from 11% to 9%, to policies designed to create a more inclusive entrepreneurship environment. Our government is always a champion for all entrepreneurs, no matter who they are, no matter where they are with their business. Since my appointment, I've been across the country meeting with chambers of commerce, boards of trade, downtown business improvement associations, and small business owners to hear what they need and how I and we can better help them in my new role. As we recognize the contributions for small business owners that they make in our communities and in our country, we have an obligation to clear any and as many hurdles as we can and break down as many barriers on their path to success. I'm very happy to say that this is precisely what we've done today and will continue to do. Et nous continuerons à les accompagner à chaque étape de leur parcours. Thank you and merci. And I'll pass it back to you, Chrystia.
Okay, well, thank you very much, colleagues. And we're ready to answer your questions.
Okay, question time. One question, one follow-up. We'll go to the room and then online. And they do have to get to cabinet. So we've got about 15, maybe if we push it, maybe 20 minutes for questions because we got a little off to a bit of a late start. First question, Kate McKenna, CBC.
The Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. We've been speaking with farmers across the country who say that they're frustrated that C-234 hasn't gotten through the Senate yet. They say that they have to pay this price on carbon for propane and natural gas. They have no choice, and that it's going to drive up costs for consumers on things like food. When it was in the House, your party didn't support that legislation, and there are conversations that some members of your government are calling senators and trying to convince them not to pass it. Why don't you support this?
Thank you for the question. Our government, our party does not have senators in our caucus, and it was an innovation of the Prime Minister to create an independent Senate. I actually remember I was already an MP the day the Prime Minister announced that the Liberal senators would no longer sit with MPs in caucus. So we understand the importance of the Senate as a place for sober second thought and for independent senators to make a judgment about the country. When it comes to farmers, let me just say this. As the daughter of a farmer, as someone who really believes in the importance of farmers for our communities, and also the importance of agriculture for Canada, we absolutely understand how important farmers are for Canada, for our economy, and our communities. And we understand also that farmers know climate change is real, and farmers want to act on it. And we're supporting them there too.
Yeah, well, what would you say to them saying that this is going to make things like groceries more expensive?
I would just say our government is there for farmers. We're there for farmers in energetically securing the free trade agreements that farmers need to have access to global markets. When it comes to supporting farmers, every single day, it's important to recognize that 97% of fuels farmers use are free from a price on pollution. And then finally, I really do want to say, because I think this is true and maybe not always fully appreciated, farmers are on the front lines of climate action. They understand what is happening to their fields and to their land. And I really see farmers as essential actors in what Canada is doing and needs to continue to do when it comes to climate action.
Nujat Al-Males, CP.
Mr. Freeland, I'm sure you might have heard that the CEO of Metro said that the meeting here in Ottawa with Mr. Champagne and yourself did not influence at all any decisions Metro has taken. And so I'm wondering, given you've threatened to use tax measures if you're not satisfied, why not slap the grocers with a windfall tax?
So I hadn't seen those comments, so I won't address them directly. But let me just say this. We understand that these are very challenging times for Canadian families, for Canadian households. And one of the challenges people are facing is the price of their groceries. And that's why our government is taking action. It was really important to have the grocers come to Ottawa and for them to hear directly from the government that we expected prices to stabilize. And that is our clear expectation. I think that's the expectation of Canadians. What's also really important is the historic changes that we are making to competition law in Canada. These measures, which are now before the House, are going to transform Canada's approach to competition. This is a meaningful, long-term step that will create more competition, particularly in the grocery sector. And more competition will create more choice for Canadians and will keep prices down. It's also action that is going to help to preserve local grocery stores in communities across the country.
And follow up also for Minister Freeland, although I'm sure Minister Fraser will want to jump in.
Okay, I think we know what area you're going for.
I'm wondering, why do you think Mr. Poilievre's housing message is resonating over your government's message?
I'm not going to agree with the premise of your question, obviously. But let me just say this. Housing is a key issue for Canadians. We get that. And we understand, we talk about the cost of living challenge. Groceries are part of it, but at the end of the day, housing is such a big part of it. If people have a home that they can afford, that is a secure and safe place to live, everything else in their life works. So we completely understand that this is a challenge for Canadians. And our message to Canadians is we are there to speak to the challenge and to act on the challenge. It is a really steep hill for us to climb as a country. And it's a steep hill for us to climb, partly because, as Sean was saying in his opening remarks, this is not a challenge that started yesterday. For decades now, governments in Canada have not been building affordable housing and supporting the building of affordable housing. We are changing that. And the second thing is, and this as finance minister, I see as a huge advantage for Canada, we're a growing country. That's a good thing. Every other wealthy industrialized nation in the world, when they look at their economy, one of the first problems they see is a demographic challenge. Because Canada is one of the few countries that is open to immigration, that is less of a challenge for us. That's a great thing, but a growing country needs to build more homes. And that's why we have policies that are about supply, supply, supply. And we have been going at it aggressively. Let's look at what we've done just this fall alone. Lifting the GST on purpose-built rental, which, by the way, the Conservatives are opposed to doing, astonishingly. That is a measure which alone will build 200 to 300,000 more homes. The Housing Accelerator Fund, which is now, going into action at municipalities across the country. We think we're up to 100,000 more homes through that fund alone. $15 billion more to finance the construction of apartments. That also, 100,000 more homes. And, the final thing I want to mention is our focus. A lot of our focus is on getting more homes built faster, affordable homes, and homes generally, because we know there's just a gap. We need more homes for Canadians. But we also recognize with elevated interest rates that this is a challenging time for people who already have a home. And people who know that their mortgages are coming up for renewal are anxious across Canada. And that's why in the Fall Economic Statement, we published for the first time the Canadian Mortgage Charter, that it's in black and white. It's published by the Finance Minister. You have the full weight of the government behind it. And it gives people the security of knowing that these are the things that you have the right to expect from your financial institution when you're renewing your mortgage. And I'll turn it over to Sean.
Sure. So your question about the opposition message resonating with Canadians, where I think their strategy is coming from, is to recognize that there's real anxiety in communities. And I think every party, every member of Parliament who represents a community, if you talk to people, young people in particular, it's clear that there are real concerns around people's inability to find a place to live that they can actually afford, both when you're dealing with low-income families who benefit from affordable housing programs, but more broadly, middle-class and working-class Canadians as well, in increasing numbers, particularly on the heels of the pandemic. The stories that you hear are really illustrating the challenges that people are experiencing. I've talked to a group of students during a recent trip to British Columbia, all of whom have more than a 1-hour commute. I've talked to students in my own community who are saying there's such a pinch in a campus community for housing that their landlords have stopped caring about providing a safe and healthy place to live because they know that they can find somebody to rent a place. You talk to young people who are making decisions to delay having a family because they're worried about the cost of finding a place now to rent and maybe the ability to afford a place in the future. The anxieties are real. They're driven by factors primarily of a global inflationary origin, and there are solutions that we can implement, and people expect us to move quickly. Over the course of the fall, as the Finance Minister has pointed out, there's new measures that we have implemented to rapidly increase the pace of home building in Canada that I will have success. But where I have challenges with Mr. Poilievre's strategy, he seems content to tap into the anxiety of Canadians without putting forward a plan that's actually going to help them. When I actually compare the measures that we're putting on the table to the measures that Mr. Poilievre is proposing to advance, his plan will result in fewer homes being constructed than we are already on pace to build. Moreover, I don't like the way he demeans people who can't afford a home. I don't like the way he describes co-op housing as Soviet-style housing. I don't like the way that he calls a small and modest home in Niagara a shack for promotional purposes. I don't like the way he uses homeless people as props on his social media accounts. The reality is we have to ask ourselves, not how are we just going to tap into the anxiety that's very real in communities for our own political gain, but who are we trying to help at the end of the day? Because if we build more rental stock, those young people who are currently commuting an hour to get to their campus might actually be able to afford a place where they can walk to school. If we invest in transit and build apartments near transit stations, as we are incentivizing through programs like not only the Housing Accelerator Fund, but the Apartment Construction Loan Program, those people who live an hour may be able to shrink that commute to 20 minutes. If we talk to seniors who only want to live in the same community where their grandkids are being raised, we can talk about tweaks to our programs that can expand access to seniors' apartments. And if you go down the list of people who have very real concerns, you can identify the right policy solutions. When I actually look at what we're proposing to do to build more homes, taking the GST off apartments to grow supply is going to make a major difference. Right now, the Conservatives are talking about putting the GST back on a lot of middle-class homes in this country. When I look at the proposals to change the way that cities build homes, where I think there might be agreement on the nature of the challenge that we need to overcome between parties, I look at the proposal that they're putting in place. It's going to eat away at the gains the Housing Accelerator Fund is already making and create a perverse incentive by attaching conditions to funding that are not within control of the recipient of that funding. It's going to have the effect of denying infrastructure funding to municipalities who need that funding to actually build more homes. I look at these ridiculous ideas like a NIMBY snitch line where you can rat out your neighbors because they don't want to allow an apartment, rather than establishing a fund that's actually going to build another apartment and incentives for municipalities to permit as of right. So when I look across the board, and I don't want to waste more time given there's more questions, I find it immensely frustrating when you see someone who's effectively a wolf in sheep's clothing pretending to understand the challenges that people are living with, but insisting that he's not going to advance the solutions that are actually going to help them. So comparing one plan to another, it's clear we are going to build more homes and more homes that people can actually afford. But my sense is the strategic decision on their part is they don't need a plan. They just need to foment anger and discontent. But I can tell you that the frustration is real, but the difference will be made when we actually put a plan forward that's going to address people's anxieties rather than to capitalize on them for political gain.
Okay, we've got 4 people on the list and less
Sorry.
than 10 minutes. So, Christian Noël, Radio-Canada.
Sur la question de l'épicerie, avec M. Champagne, vous avez rencontré les dirigeants. On n'a pas vu de mesures concrètes qui permettent de voir qu'il y a une baisse des prix. On n'a pas vu d'exemple vraiment de baisse de prix relié à cette rencontre-là. Donc, sensiblement, les gens à la maison se disent, ça ne fonctionne pas. Qu'est-ce que vous attendez pour mettre en place une taxe sur les profits excessifs?
Merci pour la question. Et je ne suis pas complètement d'accord avec vous. Je pense que c'était un important moment d'avoir une rencontre avec les chefs des grandes épiceries autour du Canada. C'est un message fort de voir du ministre, incluant la ministre des Finances, qui disent on doit...
Okay. Ma question, c'est sur la taxe. Qu'est-ce que vous attendez pour mettre en place la taxe?
On doit stabiliser les prix. Et vous avez demandé, est-ce qu'il y a des mesures concrètes? Les changements qu'on est en train de faire dans la loi de concurrence, c'est un fort changement. C'est un changement générationnel qui va absolument aider monsieur et madame tout le monde à l'épicerie et qui va protéger les petites épiceries dans nos communautés. Concernant les impôts, comme on a dit au début, on est prêt à utiliser tous les outils pour s'assurer que les prix vont se stabiliser au Canada.
Parlant de budget et l'annonce d'hier concernant Radio-Canada, est-ce que vous considérez que c'est une option d'exempter Radio-Canada CBC des compressions de 3 %? Et si oui, pourquoi? Et sinon, pourquoi pas?
Merci pour la question. C'était vraiment une nouvelle triste. Triste pour les journalistes. Moi, je trouve que être un journaliste, c'est vraiment une choix d'être là pour la communauté. Et je suis absolument convaincue que d'avoir le journalisme fort au Canada, dans nos 2 langues officielles, est essentiel pour notre démocratie. Alors, on était très, très tristes avec la nouvelle d'hier. Notre gouvernement appuie fortement Radio-Canada et CBC et on le voit dans plusieurs de mesures, plusieurs d'actions de notre gouvernement. On continuera d'être là. Je dis juste que c'est important pour nous et on continuera d'être là.
Kevin Gallagher, CTV.
My question is for Mr. Fraser. I think we heard this morning from the Deputy Prime Minister that the policies you guys have suggested, as the Deputy Prime Minister said, will create hundreds of thousands of new houses. You announced about, I think, 1,600, you said, co-op housing. But I think the anxiety you're talking about stems from the CMHC saying that we need 3.5 additional in terms of millions of housing units by 2030 just to make things affordable. So as many as reassuring, I think, as some of those numbers may be, that there's hundreds of thousands of houses, it's still well short of what the CMHC is projecting. So how does your plan intend to meet that? That's just to make things affordable by 2030.
Sure, and look, I understand the point that you're making. There's one point of disagreement I have with the pretense. The anxiety that I sense in communities is not driven by the CMHC supply gap report. It's driven by people's personal experience. They're obviously tied to one another, but my sense is people were feeling the challenge before the most recent CMHC supply gap report came out. When people are struggling to figure out whether they can pay for their tuition and their rent, whether they can deal with the rising cost of groceries and make rent, whether they can actually save up enough for that down payment, it's a source of anxiety that's impacting people's day-to-day lives. The CMHC supply gap report indicates what it would take to get back to a level of affordability around the turn of the millennium by 2030. Every unit we get closer to balancing supply and demand, we're going to have an impact on affordability, whether we restore the exact same level that existed 20 plus years ago or not. The sum total of the measures that we're dealing with is growing very quickly. Keep in mind that the measures that we're talking about represent the policies that have been rolled out over a time period that's measured in weeks. Really since mid-September, we're dealing with the GST, which is between 200,000 and 300,000. The changes to the Canada Mortgage Bond Program over a 10-year period would amount to about 300,000. The Housing Accelerator Fund, although it represents about 100,000 over the first 3 years of its rollout, the deals that we have booked to date, about 11 deals plus Quebec, over the next decade are now estimated to produce more than 250,000 just through that policy. When we continue to add these figures up, you see the number is growing and growing and growing. And I haven't covered all of the programs, including the recapitalization of the $15 billion through the Apartment Construction Loan Program, or the additional $1 billion towards affordable home construction that was included in the fall economic statement. So with every one of these policies that we've been rolling out since September, we are getting closer to restoring that level of affordability that existed a couple decades ago. But you have to keep in mind that even until we hit that number, the closer we get to it, the better impact it's going to have. I have a lot of hope as well, particularly with the Housing Accelerator Fund, because as new communities, because housing markets are local in nature, not national, as new communities have an opportunity to remove the barriers to get enough homes built, we can mirror the experience that we've seen in places like Minneapolis and Sweden and Finland, where we actually saw rapid change as a result of barriers being removed that led to more home construction that caused rents to more or less flatline in some cases. If we can actually achieve that level of circumstances where we achieve a balance in supply and demand by building out rental supply, more people are going to be able to save up for that down payment. Fewer people are going to be competing in the market if they can find an affordable place to rent. And you have this cascade effect that will be very positive. So are we where we need to be? Not yet. But are we on the right track? Increasingly so, and with a very rapid pace as a result of the policies that we've been rolling out this fall to respond to a shifting landscape where the focus is not just on affordable housing for low-income families, but also dramatically expanding supply to achieve affordability for middle-class families as well.
And I just want to add one sentence building on what Sean said. Sean talked about hope. And I think there's really a choice right now. Do you want to lean into the anxiety, or do you want to do the hard work so people can have hope? And we really believe in doing the hard work so people can have hope. Sean has spoken eloquently about what we're doing. And our announcement today of 300,000 Canadians already having opened a first home savings account, that is people voting with their money. That's 300,000 Canadians who, by definition, don't have a home now, who believe in buying their first home. They're using this savings account, which is the best way to save up your money for that home. And we are totally committed to, taking the housing challenge by the scruff of its neck, shaking it, and being sure, that we have the affordable rental homes for people, and that we have supply, so that those 300,000 Canadians and counting can afford their first home in the communities they want to live in. And they believe it because they're putting their money there.
Quick follow-up. So can you commit to building the 3.5 million additional homes the CMHC says is needed to make housing affordable?
We can make enormous progress. Before I can say with confidence there will be a specific number, we need to overcome the challenge around the productive capacity of the Canadian workforce. Right now, we're putting in place the policy framework and the investments that I have confidence will get us close to where we need to be to have a major impact on affordability. At a certain point in time, we're going to run into a new bottleneck, which is the ability to actually get the homes built with the workers that we have access to. We need to bring a sharpened focus, and we are working on this, by the way, with some of my counterparts who are not at the table today, to bring a renewed focus to training in the skilled trades for the purpose of generating a workforce to build more homes in Canada. We're working with Minister Miller to examine immigration opportunities to attract the skilled workers that we can't find in Canada in the short term, and including a reference in the fall economic statement to a program that provides permanent residency opportunities for people who have the skills to build homes. But what's really exciting for me is the opportunity in innovation. And it sounds like a political buzzword, finding a new way to solve old problems. We can build more homes and factories. We can make the investments through regional development agencies, which is actually happening today, to scale up home building factories. We can adopt policies that are going to make it easier to communicate to the sector that there is a demand to justify that investment in the first place. If we can actually unlock the potential of the productive capacity of the Canadian economy to produce more homes, I believe that the CMHC supply gap number is ambitious, but not impossible. And I think we have some work to do to grow the productive capacity of the workforce, but we need to get the policy framework and the financial tools right in order to make it possible for the workforce to generate that homes when we grow the capacity.
Okay, ministers have to get to cabinet. We've got one person in the room who hasn't had a question yet. Do you have, can you maybe, Brian Mullen, the Global?
Hi, Minister Freeland. I wanted to get your reaction to StatsCan data just released showing a significant increase in sexual assaults reported in the military last year compared to the last surveys in 2016 and 2018. Your government said you're making progress tackling sexual misconduct following the crisis of revelations over the past 2 years. This suggests not. What is going on?
Look, thank you for the question. Sexual assault is completely unacceptable anywhere, anytime. It is totally unacceptable when it comes to, the women and men, but especially the women who are in uniform to serve our country. And what I want to say to them is we hear you, we see you, and our government will keep on working and do what needs to be done to ensure that you are safe and you are heard.
Almost half the people who said they hadn't reported their sexual assaults said they didn't because they don't believe it would make a difference. Why should Canadians believe you or your officials have any credibility to tackle this problem when the lack of trust is so dire?
I think that is a good and important question. And I have a huge amount of sympathy for women in any organization, including the military, including an organization which is necessarily hierarchical, who are concerned about the consequences of speaking up. That is completely understandable. Change is hard. Making sure that women across Canada can do whatever job they want to do and can be free from sexual assault in every single workplace That's a really, really hard change. I absolutely agree that we need to do more, and I do want all Canadian women in uniform to know that we recognize the challenge, we recognize the pain and the fear, and we are totally, totally committed to supporting them.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking that last question.
Merci.